Good morning. We're listening to stories about how God cares for us in unusual ways, and how we often are God's hands and feet in that caring. And these conversations are all based on our lesson for the week that we're going to be preaching on. And just as a reminder, the lesson is the story of Elijah and the widow, where Elijah has just declared there's a famine, and he goes walking away after he declares this to everybody, and he meets a widow, and he says to her, will you feed me? And she explains that all she has left is a little bit of oil and a little bit of flour, and that she's going to go and make a cake for herself and for her son, and then they're going to die. And Elijah promises her the oil will not run out and the flour will not run out as long as he remains with her. And that is a very unexpected and unusual way where God cared for somebody. And to share a little bit of a story like that with us today is Sandy. Sandy Christian, how are you?
I'm good. Fine, thank you.
Sandy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm the wife of Dave Christian and also secretary. He's a landscape architect. We work out of our home. And to add to the story I'm going to share, we live in the entrance of Little Chickies Park. And right next to the park is where the story will begin. Right next to our house is where my story is going to begin.
That's really great. And Dave and Sandy have just done an awful lot for our congregation. We really appreciate it. Dave using his talents and Sandy using her talents as well. And that it's been really a wonderful gift you've given to us and to the community. I mean, you've done so many things for the community as well.
No, we just love people.
Well, it comes through, and thank you for that. So you have a really interesting story to tell us. Why don't you tell us the story?
Yeah, I think it was either 3 or 4 years ago. Every year, the end of January, there's a great horned owl that nests in the park right next to our house in this beautiful, majestic old sycamore in the teardrop shaped cavity. It's like a condo for owls, and it brings people from all over. And I don't remember, it was 3 or 4 years ago. There was a couple down there. Her name was Heather. She had her best friend Steve with her. And, it didn't take long for me to talk to her. I talked to anyone.
Yeah.
And she was propped up in the back of their pickup truck, videotaping the owl. And I got talking and found that she came from Ottawa. She drove 8 hours just to see this owl. So as I got to know her, I came to find out that she's disabled. She's living in subsidized living. And it's just the owls that saved her life. That's why she travels so far to see these owls. And the story began, I think it was like when she was 35. She's 45 or 46 now. She was very ill. She became ill and she didn't know what's going on. She saw hundreds of doctors, and 3 years into her illness, she was getting really bad. She started to make videos for her friend and family, and
Are you saying a goodbye video?
yeah, she was saying goodbye, but she was making goodbye videos, and she wrote her will because she thought she didn't know what was wrong. Her body kept failing, and here she was diagnosed with Lyme disease.
Oh,
And I think most people know that if you're diagnosed with Lyme, you need to get on treatment right away. So
right.
this was 3 years. And Canada don't have the treatment that the U.S. has.
Okay.
And they're all fighting for that up there. So she ended up traveling to the U.S. She found a doctor across the border in the U.S. So she travels to see this Lyme doctor 2 to 3 times a year. And so he's been helping her, but she's still, it's hard. She has really bad days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So her friend is so gracious to drive her. He lives 2 hours from where she does. So, and she doesn't have a car. So she has to rely on him to get her to these appointments. And so she drove down here. She found out on social media about the great horned owls down here. And that's how I got to know her. But the first owl that saved her life was a snowy owl. She saw a picture of a snowy owl. Her friend Steve showed her a picture of a snowy owl. She said, "Oh my goodness, that's a beautiful bird." And here they found one that was nesting in Canada, way out in the tundra. Her friend Steve took her out with her orthopedic pillows and
Huh.
blankets, and they were photographing this owl. And she thought, well, if this owl could survive in the middle of this tundra and negative 40-degree temperatures, I can survive. I can live too. I can beat this. I can get through this.
Huh.
And she actually turned to faith, and yeah, she thought it gave her the initiative to survive, and
Wow.
she wanted to learn more about owls. And she goes to see owls all over, and that's her life now.
So basically, she saw the beauty of this owl, and it restored her will to live.
Yes,
And that kind of connects with God's creation and the beauty of God's creation, and became an inspiration for her to continue.
it did.
Yeah. I'd say that's an unusual way that God cared for somebody, but it's a
Right.
beautiful story.
Right. And then to continue on to the story, I knew that she had limited funds, and
Mhm.
they would find a cheap hotel so they could stay down here because she wanted to watch the fledge. They always have two babies,
Oh, right.
and they fledge like a week apart from one another. So I knew she didn't have the funds. So I said, well, Heather, I said, why don't you stay with me? And her eyes popped open. She said, you mean stay with you for free? I said, well, sure. She
Oh,
said, "Uh, I only just met you." And I said, well, hey, we hosted exchange students over the years. It wouldn't be any different than hosting our 6 exchange students. It's actually more fun, actually, because she was an adult.
yeah, I'm sure.
So we would get up, and I'd make her coffee, and she was just in awe. And then the first time, I, she was down here with her friend the first time, and they were in a hotel.
Yeah.
And then she went back, and she wanted to drive back to see the second owl fledge. So she said, Sandy, can you message me on Facebook when the second owl fledges? She said, I am going to come down. And that's when I knew I wanted to offer her free lodging because I knew she didn't have the money to do so. And we did, and it just formed this great friendship. Um, so it's a really cool story.
It is. I mean, and when you listen to the story, you realize God was caring for her through creation and
Mhm.
inspiring her. But, you were also God's hands and feet in this story by being so gracious and offering her so much,
Right,
and
right,
that was really an act of faith on your part too, that this would be a good
right.
thing to do. And
Right. And it was sad this year because of COVID, she couldn't come down. But
yeah,
the first time she did come down, the funny thing was the Canadian Border Control, they
yeah,
asked her questions and asked, what is the purpose of your visit to the US?
yeah,
And she said, well, the owls. I'm going to see the owls. I'm going to stay with this friend. And
yeah,
he said, well, who are you staying with? And then she said, I met this friend last week that she's let me stay at her house. And he
yeah,
said, do you mean that you just met this woman and you're going to stay at their house?
yeah.
And he really questioned her. So she had to bring up her Facebook message feed and show him our conversation that,
Oh,
yes, she is in fact doing this. And then he approved to let her come through the border. So,
wow.
so that was another, she had faith. I had faith. We just knew that we were going to be good friends.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, and I just applaud the ability you have to open your heart to other people, and I know that is born in your faith.
Right. Yeah. And she still suffers with her medical bills from Lyme disease. She just
Mhm.
lost her Lyme doctor from the US because she retired, and she's been struggling to find a new one. She just found a new one. But she puts GoFundMe things up on Facebook. And I thought, well, how can I help her with her? What can I do to give? And my colored pencil art, I wanted to do a colored pencil of one of her photographs that she took of a barred owl, mother and a baby barred owl.
Uh,
And here's the picture.
okay.
I got her permission to
Aw,
to do it. And she didn't realize it, but I said, well, the mom and baby form a heart. She said, would you give me permission to use your photograph to do a colored pencil art? She doesn't let people use her photograph without permission.
Right.
And she did, because I told her, I said, Heather, I want to do this pencil art for you and give the original to you. And then she's using that art to sell like t-shirts, canvas tote bags and everything. So that's my gift to her to raise funds for her treatment.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That and very inspirational. Sandy, thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you so much for today.
You're welcome.
And I hope all of us can take this example and open our hearts up today to others.
Right. Yeah. And I did bring her as a guest to Trinity the one Sunday she was there. She never found a church up there, but she's a believer, and she just cried. She just wept in the middle of the church service at Trinity. And she just thinks our church is really special.
That's great. Hopefully we can get back to normal so that we can all sit there and cry a little bit.
I know. I think we'll all be crying tears when we're all there sitting together. So.
All right. Sandy, have a great day, okay?
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you.